The morning sky erupted in ribbons of green and gold, dancing across the heavens like some cosmic painter had gone absolutely mad with their brush. Beautiful? Sure. Terrifying? You bet your last battery pack it was. Lieutenant Marcus Kane pressed his face against the reinforced glass of Forward Base Alpha, watching the aurora paint impossible colors across what should have been a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. His radio crackled once, twice, then died with a pathetic electronic wheeze. "Well, that's not good," he muttered, tapping the device. Nothing. Not even static. Behind him, Sergeant Riley Torres burst through the command center doors, her usually composed face twisted with something between panic and disbelief. "Sir, we got a problem. Everything's dead. Radios, computers, vehicles, even the damn coffee maker." Marcus turned from the window, eyebrow raised. "The coffee maker? Now you have my attention. This isn't a joke, Lieutenant. The solar storm hit us harder than anyone predicted. We are completely cut off from command." The base around them had fallen into an eerie quiet. No hum of electronics, no distant rumble of generators, no cheerful beeping of various military gadgets that usually made up the symphony of modern warfare. Just silence, broken only by confused voices echoing from different sections of the facility. "How bad is it out there?" Marcus asked, already dreading the answer. Torres grimaced. "From what we can see, the entire grid's down. No power, no communications, no transportation that relies on electronics. Which, in case you forgot, is pretty much everything these days." Marcus rubbed his temples. 23 years in the military, and he'd never faced anything like this. Enemies? Bring them on. Terrorist attacks? Tuesday routine. But the sun itself deciding to throw a tantrum? That wasn't exactly covered in the manual. "Gather everyone in the main hall," he ordered. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with." Meanwhile, 60 miles northeast, Dr. Amelia Foster was having her own technological meltdown. The brilliant physicist had spent the last 15 years studying solar phenomena, and she'd seen this storm coming. The problem? Nobody had listened. She kicked her dead laptop for the third time, as if percussive maintenance might somehow resurrect it from its electromagnetic grave. "Stupid bureaucrats," she muttered. Digging through her emergency kit for the hand-crank radio, she'd insisted on keeping despite everyone calling her paranoid. The radio crackled to life after several minutes of vigorous cranking. Static filled the air, punctuated by fragments of panicked voices from around the region. Power grid completely offline, hospitals running on backup generators that won't start, looting reported in downtown. Foster switched off the radio and stared out her laboratory window. The university campus stretched below, unusually dark for midday. Students wandered around looking lost, holding their dead phones like some kind of modern prayer ritual that she tried to warn them. The solar storm prediction models have been screaming warnings for weeks, but the politicians and military brass had dismissed her concerns as unlikely scenarios. Now those unlikely scenarios were busy turning civilization into a very likely disaster. Her survival instincts kicked in. Food, water, medical supplies, and most importantly, her research data. If humanity was going to recover from this, they need every scrap of scientific knowledge they could preserve in the ruins of downtown Metro City. Jake Hendricks was discovering that the apocalypse had terrible timing. The former electrical engineer had been in the middle of fixing his neighbor's air conditioning when the world decided to end. Now he stood on Mrs. Patterson's roof, staring at a city that looked like someone had flipped the cosmic power switch to off. "Jake, you still up there, honey?" Mrs. Patterson called from below. The elderly woman had been surprisingly calm about the whole situation, which was more than he could say for himself. "Yeah, Mrs. P. Just taking in the view," he called back, though view was a generous term. Smoke columns rose from various points across the city where car accidents had apparently triggered fires. Without functioning fire trucks, those blazes would burn until they ran out of fuel, or someone got creative with garden hoses. He climbed down the ladder, wiping sweat from his forehead. The August heat was already becoming unbearable without air conditioning, and it was only going to get worse. "What are we going to do, dear?" Mrs. Patterson asked, her voice carrying the weight of 78 years of experience with various disasters. Jake considered the question. His engineering background told him this wasn't a temporary outage. The kind of electromagnetic pulse that could kill electronics across entire continents didn't just fix itself with a few hours and some percussive maintenance. "We're going to do what humans have always done, Mrs. P," he said, managing a reassuring smile. "We are going to adapt, improvise, and probably complain about it the entire time." She chuckled despite the circumstances. "You always were a smart boy. What's the plan? First, we inventory what we have. Food, water, medical supplies, tools that don't need electricity. Then we figure out how to contact other survivors and start rebuilding some kind of community structure." What Jake didn't mention was his growing suspicion that they weren't alone in their struggles. Reports have been circulating for months about strange lights in the sky, objects that moved in ways conventional aircraft couldn't manage. If there really were extraterrestrial observers out there, they'd just gotten front row seats to humanity's greatest test. Speaking of extraterrestrial observers, the beings aboard the research vessel Wanderer's Edge were having quite the discussion about recent events on the third planet. Commander Thix, 9 manipulated the ship's organic controls with practiced efficiency, her four-fingered hands dancing across surfaces that responded to bioelectric impulses rather than crude electronics. The bridge hummed with the sound of living technology, a stark contrast to the silent world spinning below them. "The electromagnetic event has exceeded all projections," reported Science Officer Cav, 12, his elongated skull tilted as he studied the biological displays. "Their entire technological infrastructure has been rendered inoperable." Thix 9's large, dark eyes reflected the planet's surface, where the lights of civilization had winked out like extinguished candles. "Fascinating. How long until their recovery? Based on our analysis of their technological dependencies, months, possibly years. They have become entirely reliant on electromagnetic systems for everything from food distribution to basic transportation." The commander's expression remained neutral, though internally she found herself impressed. Most species they'd observed would have descended into complete anarchy within hours of such a catastrophe. Yet preliminary scans showed pockets of humans already organizing, sharing resources, and establishing communication networks using primitive but effective methods. "Continue monitoring," she ordered. "This may provide valuable data on adaptive resilience." What the extraterrestrial observers didn't fully understand was that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology. It was their stubborn refusal to give up, even when the universe seemed determined to knock them down. Back at Forward Base Alpha, Lieutenant Kane had managed to gather 43 military personnel and 12 civilian contractors in the main hall. The group sat in folding chairs arranged in a rough circle, looking like the world's most heavily armed support group. "All right, people, here's what we know," Kane began, pacing in front of the group. "Solar storm hit us with what appears to be a massive electromagnetic pulse. Everything electronic is fried, communications are down, and we are effectively stranded." A young private raised his hand. "How long until backup arrives, sir?" Kane exchanged glances with Sergeant Torres. "That's complicated. If this storm hit as wide an area as we think it did, backup might be dealing with their own problems right now." "So we are on our own?" asked Corporal Davis, a mechanic who'd been trying unsuccessfully to resurrect one of their vehicles. "We are never on our own," Kane replied firmly. "We are military. We adapt, we overcome, and we protect the civilians who need our help. The question is, how do we do that without modern equipment?" Sergeant Torres stepped forward. "We go old school. Manual communication systems, mechanical vehicles from before electronic ignition, basic survival protocols. We have all been trained for this, even if we hoped we'd never need it." The group murmured agreement, their military training overriding their natural anxiety about the situation. These were people accustomed to following orders and solving problems under pressure. "First priority is establishing contact with other military units and civilian authorities," Kane continued. "We will send out reconnaissance teams on foot and bicycle. Second priority is securing food, water, and medical supplies for the long term. Third priority is helping coordinate civilian evacuations and emergency services in the surrounding area." What Kane didn't share with the group was his growing concern about international implications. If the storm had hit globally, some nations might view this as an opportunity to settle old scores while their enemies were vulnerable. Others might assume the electromagnetic pulse was an act of war rather than a natural disaster. Humanity was about to face its greatest test, and they'd have to pass it using nothing but their wits, their courage, and their apparently inexhaustible ability to find something to complain about even during the apocalypse. Dr. Foster had made it halfway to her off-grid cabin when she encountered her first group of fellow survivors. The abandoned gas station where she'd stopped to rest had become an impromptu gathering point for travelers stranded by the electromagnetic catastrophe. "You are that scientist from the university, aren't you?" asked a middle-aged man in a business suit that had seen better days. "Dr. Foster?" She nodded cautiously. Word traveled fast in small communities, even during disasters. "My daughter took your physics class last semester," he continued. "She said you predicted something like this might happen." Foster sighed. "I predicted the possibility. I wish I'd been wrong. Can you tell us what we're dealing with? How long until things get back to normal?" She looked around at the gathered crowd. Families with confused children, elderly couples clutching photo albums, young adults staring at their dead phones like lost puppies. These people deserve the truth, even if it wasn't what they wanted to hear. The electromagnetic pulse from this solar storm has likely damaged or destroyed most electronic systems across a very wide area, she explained. Power grids, vehicles, communication networks, medical equipment, financial systems. Essentially the entire infrastructure of modern civilization. The crowd absorbed this information with the kind of stunned silence usually reserved for particularly devastating medical diagnoses. "Recovery will take months, possibly years," she continued. "But it will happen. Humans are remarkably good at rebuilding, and we still have all the knowledge we need. We just have to remember how to do things the way our grandparents did." "What about the government?" someone called out. "Surely they have backup systems?" Foster almost laughed, but managed to contain it. "Some military and emergency systems are hardened against electromagnetic pulses, but not nearly as many as we'd need for a disaster of this scale. We're going to have to take care of ourselves and our communities until larger organizations can reestablish themselves." As she spoke, Foster couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, not by other humans, but by something else entirely. Call it scientific intuition or simple paranoia. But she'd spent enough time studying the cosmos to know that Earth wasn't nearly as isolated as most people believed. If there were other intelligences out there observing humanity's response to this crisis, she hoped they were impressed by what they saw. Because despite all their flaws and technological dependencies, humans had one quality that might just see them through this disaster. They were too stubborn to quit. The first day after the solar storm would later be remembered as the day of great silence. "No homem eletrônicos, no roarem engines, no chatterem communication devices." Just the sound of human voices calling to each other across suddenly vast distances, trying to rebuild connections that had been severed by 93 million miles of space and one very angry star. But in that silence, something else was beginning to grow. The sound of hammers on metal, of people working together, of communities forming from the ashes of convenience. Humanity was about to rediscover what it meant to be human, and the universe was watching with great interest. 3 weeks after the Great Silence began, humanity was proving that reports of their technological dependence had been greatly exaggerated. Sure, they missed their smartphones and air conditioning, but apparently they were perfectly capable of organizing civilization using nothing but determination, duct tape, and an impressive vocabulary of creative complaints. Lieutenant Marcus Kane stood atop the converted radio tower that his team had rebuilt using spare parts and what he generously called aggressive engineering. The Morse code transmitter they cobbled together from vacuum tubes and copper wire actually worked, much to everyone's surprise, including his own. "Alpha Base to Ranger Station 7. Do you copy?" He tapped out, the metallic clicks echoing across the morning air. The response came back immediately. "Ranger 7 here. We have established contact with 3 more military outposts and a civilian community of approximately 200 people. They are requesting assistance with medical supplies. Kane grinned. After weeks of radio silence, hearing from other survivor groups felt like winning the lottery. Tell them we will have a supply convoy ready by noon. How's the road situation? Mostly clear. Turns out bicycles and horse-drawn carts don't have nearly as many traffic jams as cars did. Copy that. Kane out. He climbed down from a tower to find Sergeant Torres organizing their latest supply run. The military base had become the unofficial coordination center for the entire region, mainly because they were the only group with enough discipline to maintain accurate inventory records and the firepower to discourage looters. How many communities are we supporting now? Kane asked. 17 official settlements, plus probably twice that many family groups we haven't contacted directly, Torres replied, checking her handwritten notes. The good news is that people are sharing resources and working together better than anyone expected. The bad news is that winter's coming, and most folks aren't prepared for heating their homes without electricity. Kane nodded grimly. The immediate crisis of food and water had been manageable, but long-term survival would require solutions that their ancestors had known and their generation had forgotten. Fortunately, humans were excellent at relearning forgotten skills, especially when the alternative was freezing to death. Doctor. Amelia Foster had established her own little kingdom of scientific knowledge at her off-grid cabin, which had become a pilgrimage site for anyone trying to understand what had happened to their world. Her ham radio setup, powered by solar panels and manual generators, made her one of the most connected people in the post-electronic world. This is fascinating, she muttered, studying the atmospheric readings she'd been collecting. The data suggested that the electromagnetic disturbance hadn't been entirely natural. There were patterns in the solar activity that seemed almost deliberate. That a knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a group of survivors led by a familiar face, Jake Hendricks, the engineer from Metro City. Dr. Foster? I am Jake. We met briefly at the university before everything went sideways. I have got some people here who think you might be able to help us with a problem. She gestured them inside, noting the mix of determination and exhaustion on their faces. These were people who'd been working hard to rebuild their communities, not waiting around for someone else to fix their problems. What kind of problem? She asked. Jake pulled out a hand-drawn map marked with various locations. We have been coordinating with other survivor groups, trying to establish trade routes and communication networks. But we keep running into something strange. He pointed to several marked locations on the map. These areas here, and here. People report seeing lights in the sky at night. Not aurora, not aircraft, something else entirely. And here's the weird part. Electronic equipment that was completely dead sometimes starts working again near these locations, but only temporarily. Foster studied the map, her scientific curiosity overriding her caution. The locations formed a rough pattern, almost like observation points positioned to monitor different types of human settlements. How many people have reported these sightings? She asked. Dozens, including some of your military friends from a base. They're taking it seriously enough to investigate, but they asked us to check with you first. Scientific perspective and all. Foster sat back in her chair, weighing her options. She'd been monitoring radio frequencies that shouldn't exist, detecting signals that seemed to originate from somewhere above Earth's atmosphere. If there really were extraterrestrial observers studying humanity's response to the crisis, this could be the most important discovery in human history, or it could be mass hysteria combined with desperate wishful thinking. Both were equally plausible at this point. I will need to see the locations myself, she decided. Can you arrange transportation? Jake smiled. Doc, we have got the finest collection of bicycles, horse-drawn carts, and hiking boots this side of the Mississippi. When do you want to leave? Meanwhile, aboard the Wanderer's Edge, Commander Thix, 9 was filing what might be the most interesting report of her career. The ship's biological systems hummed quietly as she dictated her observations to the living memory core. Subject species continues to exceed all projections for post-technological adaptation, she reported. Rather than descending into chaos, they have rapidly established new communication networks, resource distribution systems, and community governance structures. Most remarkably, They appear to be doing this without central coordination. Science Officer Cav 12 approached with the latest scan results. Commander, we are detecting increased electromagnetic activity from their improvised technology. They are rebuilding their communication systems using primitive but effective methods. Fix 9 studied the data with growing amazement. Most species they'd observed would have taken years to recover from such comprehensive technological failure. These humans had managed it in weeks, using nothing but salvage components and apparent sheer stubbornness. There's something else, Cav 12 continued. Several of their communities have begun investigating our observation posts. Their scientists are remarkably perceptive. The commander's large eyes widened slightly. This was unexpected. How close have they come to detecting our presence? Close enough that we should consider direct contact protocols. Their radio transmissions suggest they are aware of anomalous electromagnetic signatures in our vicinity. Fix 9 pondered this development. First contact protocols existed, but they'd never been implemented with a species in the middle of a civilization-threatening crisis. The humans might view their presence as either salvation or invasion, and their response could determine whether this first contact became a diplomatic success or a catastrophic misunderstanding. Continue monitoring, she decided, but prepare first contact protocols. If they do detect us directly, we need to be ready to respond appropriately. What neither the commander nor her science officer fully understood was that humanity's response to crisis had never been their weakness. It was their greatest strength. Back on the surface, Jake's expedition to investigate the mysterious lights was turning into something resembling a county fair. If county fairs included Geiger counters and improvised electromagnetic detectors, the doctor. Foster rode in the lead cart, her equipment bouncing alongside bags of trading goods that would serve as cover for their scientific mission. Behind her, a convoy of bicycles and horse-drawn wagons carried representatives from 6 different survivor communities, all eager to solve the mystery that had been keeping their night watches on edge. There, called out Marcus Kane, who'd insisted on joining the expedition with a squad of his soldiers. He pointed toward a hilltop where a faint blue glow was visible even in daylight. That's where most of the sightings have been reported. As they approached the location, Foster's electromagnetic detector began clicking rapidly. Whatever's up there, it's generating a significant electromagnetic field, she reported. But it's not interfering with our equipment the way the solar storm did. If anything, it seems to be enhancing electronic function in the immediate area. They crested the hill to find something that made everyone stop in their tracks. A metallic object roughly the size of a school bus sat in a cleared area, its surface reflecting the afternoon sunlight with an almost organic shimmer. The craft, for lack of a better term, was clearly not of human manufacture. Well, Jake said after a long moment of stunned silence, that's not something you see every day. Kane immediately signaled his soldiers to defensive positions, though he kept his weapon lowered. Military training warred with curiosity as he studied the object. No visible weapons, no obvious threat indicators. But stay alert. Foster approached slowly, her instruments registering electromagnetic patterns unlike anything in terrestrial technology. The field signature is completely alien, she whispered, more to herself and the group. But it's not hostile. If anything, it seems designed to minimize interference with local electronics. As if responding to her observation, a section of the craft's surface dissolved, revealing an opening. The group tensed, but instead of weapons or aggressive aliens, a figure emerged that was remarkably peaceful. Commander Thix, 9 stepped into Earth's afternoon sunlight, her elongated form moving with careful, non-threatening gestures. She wore no visible armor or weapons, and her large, intelligent eyes conveyed what humans might recognize as curiosity rather than hostility. "Greetings," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the obvious differences in vocal anatomy. "I am Commander Thix, 9 of the research vessel Wanderer's Edge. We have been observing your species' response to the recent electromagnetic event." The silence stretched for several heartbeats as both species processed their first direct contact with intelligent alien life. Finally, Dr. Foster stepped forward, her scientific training overriding her natural caution. I am Dr. Amelia Foster. Are you responsible for our electromagnetic disaster? Fix Nine's expression conveyed what might have been amusement. No, Dr. Foster. The solar storm was entirely natural, though unusually powerful. We have been observing your recovery efforts with great interest. Observing us like lab rats? Kane asked, his military instincts keeping him skeptical despite the apparently peaceful nature of first contact. Observing you like a species that has impressed us beyond all expectations. Fix, Nine replied. Your recovery from complete technological failure has been remarkable. Most civilizations we have studied would have required decades to achieve what you have accomplished in weeks. Jake stepped forward, his engineering mind already racing with possibilities. You have studied other civilizations? How many? Hundreds. Your species is unique in your adaptability and resilience. We came to study your response to crisis, but we find ourselves wanting to offer assistance instead. Foster felt her heart racing as the implications sank in. What kind of assistance? Fix. Nine gestured toward her ship. Technology that could accelerate your recovery without making you dependent on external support. Knowledge that could help you rebuild stronger than before. Perhaps most importantly, contact with a wider galactic community that has been watching Earth with growing respect. The human group exchanged glances, 100 questions and concerns passing between them without words. This was the moment that would define humanity's future, and they were making it up as they went along. There's one thing I need to know, Kane said finally. Why help us? What do you get out of it? Fix Nine's large eyes seemed to twinkle with what humans might recognize as admiration. Lieutenant Kane, your species has just demonstrated something we have rarely seen in our travels. The ability to maintain hope, cooperation, and innovation even when your entire technological civilization collapsed around you. The kind of resilience is valuable beyond measure. She paused, studying the faces of the humans before her. We don't want to uplift you or make you dependent on our technology. We want to offer you partnership with species who understand that true strength isn't measured by the sophistication of your tools, but by what you do when those tools fail. Foster found herself smiling despite the overwhelming nature of the situation. So you're saying we passed the test? Dr. Foster, Fix, Nine replied. You didn't just pass the test. You redefined what we thought was possible. As the sun began to set over the hilltop, where two species met for the first time, the electromagnetic aurora began to dance across the sky once again. But this time, it wasn't a harbinger of disaster. It was a celebration of resilience, adaptation, and the indomitable human spirit that had impressed observers from across the galaxy. The age of isolation was ending, but the age of humanity was just beginning. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of hammers on metal continued as people rebuilt their world, one stubborn, determined, gloriously human project at a time. The solar storm had taken away their technology, but it had given them something far more valuable. Proof that when everything else failed, humans would find a way to succeed anyway. The universe was about to discover that Earth's greatest export wasn't technology or resources, but hope itself. 3 hours later, the impromptu first contact meeting had evolved into something resembling a very strange town hall meeting. Word had spread through the survivor networks faster than anyone thought possible without electronic communication, and representatives from dozens of communities had arrived to witness history in the making. Commander Thix, Nine stood patiently before the growing crowd, answering questions with the kind of diplomatic grace that suggested her species had done this before. Her responses were creating more questions than they answered, but that seemed to be par for the course when dealing with humans. So let me get this straight, said Maria Santos, a former city councilwoman who'd become the unofficial leader of the Metro City Survivor Group. You have been watching us for how long? Your species has been under observation for approximately 200 of your years. Fix, Nine replied. Though we have maintained strict non-interference protocols until now. A murmur rippled through the crowd. 200 years meant they'd been watching through wars, disasters, technological revolutions, and probably every embarrassing moment of human history. And you never thought to introduce yourselves before our entire civilization collapsed? Asked Dr. Foster, though her tone was more curious than accusatory. Protocol dictated that first contact should only occur when a species demonstrated sufficient technological and social development. However, Fix, 9 paused, her large eyes sweeping across the assembled humans. Your response to this crisis has forced us to reconsider our criteria. Jake Hendricks raised his hand like he was back in school. What do you mean by reconsider? Traditional first contact protocols assume that a species requires advanced technology to handle interstellar relationships. Your species has proven that assumption incorrect. You have demonstrated that resilience, adaptability, and social cooperation are far more important than technological sophistication. Lieutenant Kane stepped forward. That's all very flattering, Commander, but what does this mean practically? Are we talking about some kind of alliance? Trade agreements? Or are you just here to pat us on the head and tell us we are special? Fix Nine's expression conveyed what humans might interpret as amusement. Lieutenant Kane, we are offering you membership in the Galactic Resilience Coalition. The crowd fell silent. Even by first contact standards, that sounded significant. Never heard of it, Foster said dryly. Because it doesn't exist yet, Fix, Nine replied. We are creating it specifically for species like yours. Traditional galactic politics are dominated by technological advancement and resource control. But recent events across multiple star systems have shown that technological civilizations are remarkably fragile when faced with natural disasters, system failures, or hostile actions. She gestured toward the human crowd. You have proven that true strength lies not in having the most advanced technology, but in maintaining social cohesion and innovative problem-solving when that technology fails. That's a skill set the galaxy desperately needs. Science Officer Cav, 12, emerged from the ship carrying what appeared to be a metallic briefcase. If I may demonstrate, he said, his voice carrying a different accent than his commander's, but equally clear. He opened the case to reveal what looked like a collection of crystalline components and metallic tools. These are fabrication templates for hybrid technology. They combine your mechanical engineering principles with our materials science, creating devices that are both advanced and resilient to electromagnetic interference. Jake's engineering instincts immediately kicked in. Can I take a look? Please do. Jake examined the components with growing excitement. This is incredible. You have essentially created analog versions of digital technology. These circuits would work even during electromagnetic storms. Exactly. We have learned from your recovery efforts. Pure technological advancement creates vulnerability. Hybrid systems that combine multiple technological approaches create resilience. Dr. Foster leaned in to examine the devices. You are offering to teach us this. We are offering to learn from each other. Fix, 9 corrected. Your improvisational skills and social organization methods are as valuable to us as our materials science is to you. Maria Santos spoke up. This all sounds wonderful, but what's the catch? In my experience, nobody offers something for nothing. Fix, 9 seemed to appreciate the directness. The catch, as you put it, is responsibility. If you accept partnership with the Galactic Resilience Coalition, you will be expected to assist other species facing similar crises. Your expertise in post-disaster recovery would make you valuable consultants for civilizations dealing with technological collapse. The implications sank in slowly. Humanity wasn't just being offered membership in a galactic community. They were being recruited as the galaxy's disaster recovery specialists. So you want us to become cosmic emergency responders? Kane asked. Among other things, yes. But also teachers, innovators, and partners in developing more resilient civilizations across the galaxy. The crowd buzzed with excited conversation as people processed this information. After months of focusing on simple survival, they were suddenly being offered a role in galactic civilization that played to their apparent strengths. There's something else, Cav, 12 added, pulling out a device that looked like a cross between a radio and a telescope. We have been monitoring communications from other star systems. 3 civilizations in nearby sectors have recently experienced similar electromagnetic events. They are not recovering as successfully as you have. Foster felt a chill of recognition. Are you saying the solar storms aren't isolated to Earth? Correct. There appears to be a pattern of increased stellar activity across this region of the galaxy. The cause is still unknown, but the effects are becoming widespread. Fix, 9 nodded gravely, which is why your recovery methods are so crucial. You may have developed the key to surviving what appears to be a natural phenomenon affecting multiple star systems. The weight of this revelation settled over the crowd like a heavy blanket. They weren't just recovering from a local disaster. They were potentially developing solutions for a galactic crisis. How many civilizations are we talking about? Maria asked. Dozens already affected, with projections suggesting hundreds more at risk as the electromagnetic disturbances spread. Cav, 12 replied. Jake looked up from the alien technology he'd been examining. So no pressure, but we might be the guinea pigs for saving galactic civilization. You are not guinea pigs. Fix, 9 said firmly. You are the success story. Other species are studying your recovery methods to adapt them for their own situations. Lieutenant Kane crossed his arms. And if we say no, if we decide we are not ready for this kind of responsibility, then we respect your decision and withdraw. But Lieutenant, your species has already proven they don't shy away from responsibility when lives are at stake. Every survivor community we have observed has been focused on helping others, not just ensuring their own survival. She had a point. Even during their darkest hours, human communities have been sharing resources, coordinating rescue efforts, and working to save complete strangers. It was apparently unusual enough to impress alien observers. Doctor Foster stepped forward. I have a question about timeline. How long do we have to make this decision? The formal invitation can wait until your global recovery is more complete. Fix, 9 replied. The knowledge exchange could begin immediately. We can establish communication networks that would allow your communities to coordinate more effectively while also connecting you with other recovering civilizations. Other recovering civilizations. Foster's scientific curiosity was clearly piqued. Species facing similar challenges who could benefit from your innovations while sharing their own solutions. Think of it as a galactic disaster recovery network. The crowd erupted in animated discussion as people began to grasp the full scope of what was being offered. They weren't just rebuilding their own world. They could be helping to rebuild dozens of worlds across the galaxy. I have one more question, Maria Santos called out. Why didn't you help prevent the disaster in the first place? If you knew it was coming, couldn't you have warned us? Fix 9's expression became solemn. We detected the stellar anomalies, but our projections suggested your technological civilization would be resilient enough to handle the electromagnetic effects. We were wrong about your technology's vulnerability, but we severely underestimated your species' ability to adapt without it. She paused, looking across the faces of the assembled humans. In retrospect, experiencing this crisis may have been the best thing that could have happened to prepare you for galactic partnership. You have learned skills that most advanced civilizations have forgotten, and you have proven those skills work under the most challenging conditions. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hilltop meeting ground, the magnitude of the moment began to sink in. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and not only survived, but impressed observers from across the galaxy. So what happens next? Jake asked. Commander Thix, 9 smiled, an expression that translated surprisingly well across species lines. Next, we help you finish rebuilding your world. Then, if you are willing, we help you start rebuilding everyone else's. Lieutenant Kane looked around at his fellow humans, seeing the same mixture of excitement, terror, and determination that had carried them through the last few months. Well, folks, looks like we have got work to do. The meeting broke up as darkness fell, but the conversations continued long into the night. For the first time since the Great Silence began, people were talking about the future with genuine optimism. They'd survived the end of their technological world, and apparently, that was just the beginning of their story. The galaxy was about to discover what humans had always known. When everything falls apart, you pick up the pieces and build something better. And if you were really lucky, you complain about it the entire time while secretly enjoying the challenge that IT was, as any seasoned science fiction storyteller will tell you, exactly how you change the galaxy forever. One stubborn, determined, gloriously human project at a time.